Hello everyone. With the tripod update coming out next month, I've been working on securing tripods for all of my alts. Now one of my favorite alts to play is my Pinnacle Glaivier, and in doing some research and trying to figure out the best tripods for her, I realized that there is a good bit of diversity in what you can select. So I did a little bit of testing and a little bit of research, and I thought I'd put it into a video in hopes that it would help someone out. So I'll talk about the build, I'll talk about the tripod choices, do some tests, and let you know my thoughts. So this is my Glaivier stats. A lot of these have been modified by Trixian, but I'm using 1640 spec and 530 swiftness. For the engravings, I'm using Grudge, Keen Blunt Weapon, Cursed-Stall, Raid Captain, Pinnacle, and level 2 Spirit Absorption to simulate the Yearning effect from supports. Here are the gems, nothing too crazy or special. I am running a 4-3 build, that means 4 blue skills and 3 red skills, as this seems to be the most popular build in Korea right now, because of the balance changes in making your red skills stronger. And for the cards, I'm using Light of Salvation 18. So with that, we can take a look at the bonuses that the Pinnacle buff provides. When I am in the red stance and we take a look, we can see that we have about 359% crit damage. And when we are in our blue stance, we have about 56% crit rate. So that's the kind of build that I'm currently using now. So as for the tripods that I was kind of having a debate on, the first skill that I was looking at was Thrust of Destruction. So with Thrust of Destruction, you have in the middle row tripods, Spear of Destruction, which gives you 50% crit rate and 50% damage, which in conjunction with Air Ripping Thrust makes it 100% crit rate. So I thought to myself, well, if we do that for, Red Dragon's Horn and Starfell Pounce, it should make sense to do it for Thrust of Destruction. The only problem with this tripod is that it gives you crit damage, 50% of it. And in your red stance, you already have a lot of critical damage, so that's not as beneficial as you might think. So the other commonly used tripod is Weak Point Detection, which just gives you flat 60% damage, which doesn't conflict with the critical damage. So I wanted to make the first comparison between these two. So I'll go ahead and try a test with Spear of Destruction and a test with Weak Point Detection. So let's start with Spear of Destruction. I'm gonna go ahead and just hit the boss for 2 minutes. I have unlimited resources set here because I want to stay in the Magic Addiction set effect, because generally you want to be in that set effect on Pinnacle Glaivier, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so I didn't finish that last rotation there because I just wanted to cut it at a clean cutoff there. The damage is about 427 million, with a DPS of about 3.5 million. You can see that this is a very comfortable setup, right? You use your Shackling Blue Dragon, you fit in all of your blue skills, and then when you swap over to this stance, all of these are 100% crit rate, so you can freely cast them at will. But you'll notice that as I do this rotation, when I do this, do this, do this, do this, when I swap over, you can see that I can still get in my Thrust of Destruction with a little bit of time left on that Shackling Blue Dragon. In addition, if you can also hit the boss from the back, that's an additional 10% crit rate on top of the 18% crit rate that you get from your synergy. The only problem with this is that the timing is a little bit tight. So, if we try to use this weak point detection, of course, we would want it to land with the back attack on top of the Shackling Blue Dragon. And so, this tripod here is actually the more preferred one because it does more damage, despite losing 50% crit rate because of the aforementioned surplus of crit damage. So how do we make up for this? Well, the idea is we change up our rotation just a little bit. If we take a look at Raging Dragon Slash, we can see that its last tripod already gives it 25% crit rate. So it's not necessary for us to cast Raging Dragon Slash within Shackling Blue Dragon. So if we cast it outside of it, it should give us more room to cast this within a back attack window and on top of Shackling Blue Dragon. And it turns out if you do the math at about 60 to 62% crit rate, this tripod just becomes better. If you start factoring things like crit rate synergies and so on and so forth, this is going to be the preferred tripod of choice pretty much no matter what. So the rotation changes a little bit. We start with Raging Dragon Slash, then we go into Shackling, Half Moon, and Wheel of Blades, and with this we have enough time to swap over and land our Thrust of Destruction on the boss with our Shackling buff intact. So let's go ahead and test that out and compare it to this result. Okay, so with that I got a total damage of about 434 million and a DPS of about 3.6 million. So you'll notice in that case, I always had ample time to cast Thrust of Destruction while having the synergy buff, But even despite that, in a real raid, of course, the boss is going to move around. You always won't be able to capture that. But if you can focus on just back attacking with one skill and getting that extra bonus, I think personally using weak point detection is the right choice in this case. Alright, the last couple of tripods that we can take a look at are going to be on Raging Dragon Slash and Half Moon Slash. So you'll see in this rotation, Raging Dragon Slash is kind of isolated, you just kind of cast it on its own, right? So therefore, because of that, we can take the other tripod that increases its casting time, but also greatly increases its damage in Precise Slash. You can see that it is 120% damage versus the 70% damage that you get from additional Slash, so that's quite a steep upgrade. Now, of course, by doing this, right, you can see that the animation is much longer, so some people might not be okay with that. The other thing that we can factor in is that alongside this kind of fitting in Thrust of Destruction into our Shackling Blue Dragon, we have ample time to do so, right? You can see that I can even land Red Dragon Horn almost inside that duration, even though it doesn't matter because this one's 100% crit rate anyway. And so, in that case, what we can do is take the higher damage tripod of Half Moon Slash, which comes in the form of Chasing Slash. Again, 120% damage versus 80% damage is quite the steep increase, but again, with this change, if I have to quickly swap around this, now this is what our Half Moon Slash looks like. You can see that the animation and holding make it a lot longer. But having both of these tripods ensures that you have the maximum damage build, at least in terms of potential, right? It's a little bit less comforting to play, but it will give you the most amount of damage if you play well. So let's go ahead and test it out and see how it does. So you can see with the maximal damage tripods, while the rotation is fairly tight, you don't get that much time to cast your Thrust of Destruction anymore because of the increased duration of Half Moon Slash. And casting Raging Dragon Slash also is a little bit of a feels bad because you have that additional 1.3 seconds. The damage numbers do not lie, 469 million and a DPS of about 3.9 million, as you can see here. So what's the end result? Should you be playing all these tripods? If you are in search of the highest damage build and you believe that you can play better to reach that potential, then yes, you should be playing this build. But again, in a real raid scenario, bosses will move, you won't always be able to land all these abilities in that perfect Trixian rotation. You always won't be able to grab the back of the boss. Sometimes you'll just have to cast Thrust of Destruction from the side, and it'll be super smooch like this. But from what I've seen and looking at a bunch of builds, pretty much everyone universally takes the weak point detection tripod on Thrust of Destruction, just because with crit synergies and multiple opportunities to make it better than the other one, it's just the superior choice. But in terms of the other tripods, I've seen some people just use the easier to use versions of these just because it's more comfortable and, fun. Some people do the maximum damage combination like this. And then there are others who kind of do a 50-50. Some will pick Half Moon Slash, Chasing Slash because it's good for, chasing down enemies, but they'll take the standard 2-swipe of Raging Dragon Slash tripod, or vice versa. They might take this version because it's easy to land, it does a lot of damage all at once, they don't have to hold down the skill, but they might use the other version of this that just creates a tornado. In any case, I hope this video was helpful to someone who's looking to set up their Glaivier tripods. I did a bit of research and this is what I came up with. If there's any experienced Glaivier players who can maybe tell me any other things that are good to know about these tripods, I greatly appreciate them. And that's all I have for you today. So with that, take care and see you in the next one.